Only 140 short days until football season starts. But who's counting? The best Buckeye spring game coverage on News Radio 610 WTVN.
And welcome. We are on the air after a scintillating spring football game. I'm Matt McCoy. We have a 610 WTVN football analyst, former Buckeye assistant coach, and former Buckeye player Bill Conley with me. Eric Rieser, the Sports in the Afternoon, is in here as well. We got Lori Schmidt staked out at the stadium. We'll have Ryan Day's comments live after the Gray beat the Scarlet 35-17, and we'll be hearing from Ryan Day shortly here. Bill, we the other day, Joel Riley had Ryan Day on, and I asked him. I said, what are you looking to get out of the spring game? What would make you leave Saturday happy? And the very first thing he said is nobody gets hurt. Yep. To my knowledge, nobody got hurt. So number one for
unless
for
they
Ryan
got
Day.
sunburnt or something, didn't have enough sunblock on.
But what is your? Can you take much away as a coaching staff? Now, I'm sure they're going to look at the film or whatever and break down. Is there any more value placed on what we saw and we're able to watch today than there is in the other 14 practices? Or in the coach's mind, is this just another practice?
No, this is just another practice. They make the decisions through the other practices. You want to leave. Here's what you do want to do, though. You want to leave spring practice, and you want to have an idea. When it's a fight at a certain position. For example, this year, obviously, everybody's talking about the quarterback position. Who's the leader there? You want to be about, your initial 2 deep, which is really only about 1.5 deep, because there'll be some freshmen that'll end up breaking into the lineup. So that and stay healthy is really what you want to do, and they've done that really through the 14 practices. Today was just a show to have the kids a chance to play in the stadium and those things. But so much of football is the intangibles, the leadership, the decision making. The guy can be the field journal out there for the whole football team, and that has yet to be determined, because until you really get in the heat of the battle, sometimes you don't know that.
By the way, if you're listening and you're driving home from the spring game, you want to call us 614-821-WTVN. That is 821-9886 or 1-800-610-WTVN. We're going to be on the air till 4. Eric, you and I were talking. It is hard to tell much from a game like this, but there are certain things that you can pick up. You got to give credit to Josh and Wint, had a couple of interceptions. Garrett Wilson, who, by all accounts, Ryan Day the other day was asked about guys that stuck out to him this spring, and Garrett Wilson, the freshman, is the first kid that he mentioned. He made a real nice catch with good coverage on a touchdown. So there are a few things I guess you can pick up.
Yeah, he showed, I think, for a lot of these guys, Amir Reap's another guy that stood out to me. To give really the fans a chance to get to know your Buckeyes is what this was. And for the coaching staff, they've got to be thrilled with how today turned out. I thought that to start out, you're looking at your quarterback battle between Matthew Baldwin, Justin Fields, and maybe Chris Chugginoff. I don't know. It could happen.
I kind of doubt it.
You were able to kind of let them dip their toes into the water and then gradually get them more comfortable just on the field, in the horseshoe, in front of fans, and then they let them air it out. And so for a glorified practice, which is what this was, you got everything I think you wanted to out of it. And then you found some guys that when you say, look, go make a play, they went and made plays. Garrett Wilson was one of them with that touchdown snag because, he had guys draped over him. And look, some of these guys, third, fourth stringers that probably won't see too much time this season, but it's still as live fire as you're going to get until you actually have your game against Florida Atlantic.
It struck me, Bill, that I saw Garrett Wilson make that catch. And this is a football team that last year, they lost a, phenomenal quarterback that had a all-time single season in Dwayne Haskins. And we'll see how the offense evolves with Justin Fields and or Matthew Baldwin. But they also lost Johnny Dixon, Paris Campbell, and Terry McLaurin, who were dynamic and, when they went to the combine, blew everybody's mind how fast they were and everything. So they lost a big chunk of the receivers. But, man, they still got guys. Austin Mack was out there making catches. KJ Hill's obviously back. Ben Victor had the 98-yard touchdown catch. And now you add Garrett Wilson to that. They still are deep at that receiver position.
We talked last year, Matt, about it. They were, a good 2 to 3 deep. So many teams like to have our second or third team receivers last year. And really now, is their chance to be the starters. They have so much playing experience and success. So that's an area that if you're a first-year starting quarterback and you have guys that have experience, catching the football in big games, that's a real plus, only four returning starters on offense, but a lot of guys that played even on the offensive line. Defense, 9 returners. Obviously you've got to build your offense around the quarterback. So maybe it's a good situation to have some good skilled athletes to make up maybe for some of the guys that we did lose up front.
We'll have Ryan Day's comments coming up shortly after the spring game. Again, Gray wins 35-17 over Scarlet. You can also tweet at me. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio, and I already have a question. Brian saying, am I being too critical of Justin Fields? He looked like he was wild with some of his throws today. Don't get me wrong, excited about his mobility, but wonder about his accuracy as a passer.
Too critical. They had Dwayne Haskins on the broadcast on Big Ten Network, and he said, he was asked, what do you see from these guys? He says, I see 2 young guys.
Yeah.
And that, Justin Fields and Matthew Baldwin, and that's exactly what they were today. And no, he had some wonky throws. I thought he stayed in the pocket a little too long. Again, I was wondering just kind of out loud if that's Ryan Day behind him being like, just stay, because
probably,
a guy like a Justin Fields is first instinct, pockets collapsing, I'm gone.
Right.
And we saw that with that touchdown scamper where he's got jets. We know that. These things are known. But just to try and get him more comfortable in that pocket, because when you got a guy like Dwayne Haskins last year, he stood there like a statue and nothing fazed him.
Yeah.
So it's just for these guys to develop that, and it'll take a while to do so.
Yeah, and that exactly right. It's going to take some experience. Dwayne Haskins was a phenomenal. I mean, it was somebody that those guys don't come around. For a young guy, first-year starter to play like that in this biggest stage was exceptional. Now you got 2 talented athletes fighting for the quarterback spot, and you did see some positives, though. They both showed that they have the ability to put the ball on the money when they have to. They showed the ability, Justin Fields especially, to be able to scramble and run the football, which is something we didn't have last year.
Right.
So you saw some good things, but there's no substitute for playing experience in game situations because the game's so much faster.
The other thing I would say, with the way that Ryan Day constructed the game, and Eric, you're talking about him standing back there with touch football, basically, with the quarterbacks, doesn't that take away a lot of what Justin Fields is going to be next year? You know what I mean? Like, it's... Yeah. The rules of today were a disadvantage to him because he's so electric, moving in the pocket and things like that, and running the football, and he's not allowed to do that. I guess my point to Brian would be, I don't think it's necessarily fair to evaluate Justin Fields in a game like this when half of what makes him dynamic and made him a 5-star quarterback, he really couldn't do very much today.
Yeah, and the ability to break tackles in the open field. He didn't get to see that because defense wasn't allowed to tackle.
And with the cheese platter of opponents the Buckeyes have in the first couple weeks of the season, the Miami Redhawks of the world, he's going to be able to just dust off arm tackles and scoot by people. Also, the kind of thud thing robbed Jeffrey Okudah of a touchdown, because I don't know if you call that down, but when you run the football up the gut, that kind of play, just you can't just, he touched him, he's down, because you've got big uglies going in the trenches. And so, it's thud, but it's like subjective thud.
Yeah.
I felt.
Yeah. Well, when Ryan Day designs the rules for the spring game, Bill, does he have in mind, look, I know Justin Fields can run. Like, to Eric's point about it, I felt like he held the ball in the pocket too long. But he may have been instructed to do that, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want you running. I know you can run. Do before a spring game, do coaches talk to players about that? And this is what I want to see. This is what I want to run.
Absolutely, they cover that in a lot. And here's the other thing about it. You're talking about a spring game where you got a defense that's not going to go full go and hit you. So, standing there, you want to tell your quarterbacks, go through your reads. Go through your reads. Go to second receiver, sometimes third receiver. And you don't want to be impatient about that. You have to learn that. And then as the offensive line comes and gels together in a game situation by the time we get into the season, that stuff will come more natural.
What do you think of Matthew Baldwin throwing the football?
Good arm. It's one of those things that I think they both have a strong arm. And we heard this about Matt Baldwin last year before he got hurt, that he really was a good quarterback. And I think we saw enough that, he can throw the football. Now, how does he manage a game? How does he lead the team? What type of field journal he'll be has yet to be shown. But I think you'd have to walk away from this spring game saying Justin Fields by far is a guy it looks like they're looking toward.
I don't want to read too much into it. We, as media, typically are kept out of practice, but there was a practice last Friday, a week ago yesterday, that they let us watch. And Justin Fields took every snap with the ones. Now, Ryan Day is saying, I haven't made up my mind. I'm not going to declare number one and all that
and
thing.
He won't until he absolutely has to.
But it sure looks like to me. And also, I mean, even today, who's the first quarterback that went out with the first series? Justin Fields. Is it coach speak, Bill? Do you think their mind is, I don't want to say made up, but like 80%, yeah, it's going to be Fields? Or does Matthew Baldwin still have a fighting chance to, be the starting quarterback?
Oh, I think he has a fighting chance because Justin Fields has yet to prove it as a starter in a game. I mean, you want a situation where your second guy's ready to go in case the first guy, lays an egg. So you don't know how good he is until the pressure's on. When the guys, those big 6'6" defensive ends are rushing full speed at you. And how much courage do you have to step up and throw the football? So a lot has to be proven yet.
And Eric, with the early schedule that you mentioned, Florida Atlantic, I would guess that you're going to see Justin Fields start or whatever, but you'll get an opportunity. They'll have an opportunity to get Matthew Baldwin in those games under live reps and see what he can do.
And you have to look at his predecessor. I mean, Urban did the same exact thing when he had a quarterback battle. He didn't say anything. And
yes,
he gave,
yep.
He gave you on the field in practice a look as to what he was thinking, but he never really said it. It was all last season. He loved Tate Martell. And that was, something that I think a lot of people, at least talking in this building, were kind of like, yeah, okay, because of how good Dwayne Haskins was. But that's just something that I think he's going to do to keep all of these guys comfortable in that room. But for me, it's, the first guy, the number one was out with the ones, and he's your number one, and it'd be Fields. Has to be.
Again, you can tweet at me. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. And Liz did that and said, was impressed with Master Teague running the football, had a nice touchdown run. Is he the backup to J.K. Dobbins?
Master Teague had a good spring game last year. He did.
He
ran the ball a lot less.
I will say this. I mean, they're looking for one with Mike Weber gone. But, I mean, you brought it up before we went on the air, Bill. DeMario McCall was out this spring. I think that's probably the guy they want to be number two, but that doesn't mean Master Teague isn't in the hunt for that.
Oh, exactly right. I mean, the kid's earned some playing time, obviously, by getting heck beat out of him for 2 years and stuff. But really, I mean, with Dobbins and with McCall, those are your two guys. But I think that the young Crowley guy looked pretty good too. So, there's some depth, not as much as you'd like at that position, but I had.
You can never have enough.
You can't
running
have running backs. I remember at times we started off with one guy and ended up with the number 4, and that's happened because you're one play away. When you get hit by the guys in this league, there's a chance that you're going to go down sometimes.
Okay, we're still waiting. We do have Ryan Day. Never mind. Let's go right to Ryan Day right now in the locker room after Ohio State spring game.
Yeah, I think that they both did a good job today. They both flashed at times. Still a work in progress. We still got work to do, but I thought that they gave some of the receivers a chance at times. Sometimes it's hard when you're not in the tackle situation. Is it a sack? Is it not? Do we break out? And Justin is he can kind of create on the edge a little bit, so didn't get a chance to see that as much. I thought Matthew made a couple really nice throws down the field. We turned the ball over and threw it to them, which is good for the defense. So we'll keep looking at it, but I thought both of them had positive days.
Over here to the left, Austin.
Ryan, beyond the quarterbacks, as you leave here today after those 15 workouts, how much do you feel like you got accomplished, and how much more is there that you want to see?
With the quarterbacks?
The whole
team? This is just the first step, from this season. We got a lot of work to do. We got a good team, though, I think, and I think that this is a part of the season. We then have this off season, the summer, preseason, and so we'll just keep building from here. But there's a lot of good pieces, a lot of good leadership starting to form out there, and We tried to get a lot of the guys who had played a lot of reps out of there early on, so sometimes it's hard to tell. But the overall spring was excellent. The energy was really good. I thought guys got tougher. It was a physical spring.
Over here to the right, Rob.
Ryan, what usually lags behind with quarterbacks? I mean, what do they have to kind of catch up with at this?
Good question. So I think that when you're in the meeting room and you're learning the offense, it's one thing to say it. It's one thing to see it on film. It's another thing to do it in a 7-on-7 where there's no rush, and then when the rush is going. So it's all the progression, and so you can't simulate all that. There's nothing you can do. You have to play the game, and so there's so many that goes into it: the protection, and it's reps, it's experience, it's going through it all. The more you know when you step on the field, the more you're prepared, the better off you're going to be. But there's nothing that replaces experience. So the more these guys get a chance to play and run the offense, the better they'll be.
There were some overthrows. Is that sort of the outcome of seeing the rush for the first time? You just kind of.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it. Getting your feet in the ground, the timing of everything, and how fast it's moving. Or maybe there's a defensive lineman that flashes in front of your face, and being able to move your feet. And again, we have to drill that. We have to get better at that, so those things don't happen. But again, if you've never done it with a real guy rushing at you, it's very, very different. And so the more times they get it, the better they'll be.
Over here to the left, Dave.
Ryan, as you enter the Summit, is there any separation at quarterback between Justin Fields and Matthew Baldwin?
Again, I don't really know right now. I'm going to keep looking at it. I know I keep saying that to you, and everybody wants to know. But, again, I don't think right now that we're going to kind of make a decision on that. I think it'll continue through the preseason. And right now we only have 3 quarterbacks, and Danny's our 4th. But, imagine if someone, steps off a curb and hurts their ankle tomorrow, we got 2, And so these guys have to keep going. They're probably all going to have to play one way, shape, or form along the way. So they'll keep pulling for each other. And as long as that room gets strong, that's the key.
Leaving spring, what position group or position is the biggest concern for you? I know last year Urban said it was field safety leaving spring. Is there a certain position that is your biggest concern leaving spring?
Well, I think that the offensive line, we have 4 guys to replace there. And so that's something that there's probably the least experienced. And that and quarterback are the 2 for me. On defense, we have a lot of guys returning with experience. I think that our linebackers have to really produce this year, so that'll be an emphasis point. But I think when you look at it, those guys have played a lot of football, and I think they're really embracing the scheme. So I think that we have good depth there. Now they're going to have to play well and play veteran. So I would say, concern-wise, the O-line, just because they haven't, we lost 4 real guys there. And Thayer didn't play in the spring, so how is that all going to look when we get into the preseason? We do have some guys coming in, which is good. Got the cavalry coming, which is important, and then quarterback.
Folks, I just got time for 2 more questions. It's a lovely day. I got players here. I want you to talk to players. Over here to the right, Clay.
You had an impromptu reunion there of former guys, NFL guys. How much will those guys mean to you going forward? Was it a orchestrated, hey, you're welcome, we want you? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the former players here, they've built this, and that's the reason why we're all here. And the brotherhood's really, really strong. Mike Thomas came into my office yesterday, and I had a recruit in there, and he spent 15, 20 minutes with us just talking about what that means in the NFL and the brotherhood that they have of Ohio State Buckeyes in the NFL. And then those guys coming back to support the guys who are here right now. It's a special group. You can see it. I mean, when you go around, you go from guy to guy. It's not just, former Buckeyes. It's, NFL greats. It's, former Buckeye greats and All-Americans, all conference players. So it's just remarkable when you get around those guys, the excellence that you're around.
Did you see the proposal?
Yeah, I did. And I was told ahead of time of that. And I think that, Drew and his girlfriend have a special relationship. So that was good for them to see. And the team's reaction was pretty good.
And finally to the left over here, Doug.
Ryan, you guys had a quarterback competition last spring with Dwayne and Joe, and obviously that was 2 much more experienced guys. Just in terms for all of us of maybe trying to just understand context of where this competition is now compared to last year, just what's it been like this spring when you have a competition, but again, just 2 much younger guys?
Yeah, another great question. When you had Joe and Dwayne here, they didn't have a body of work on the field, but they had a body of work practicing. And the coaches and myself and we had gone through it, and we kind of knew what we had. We saw them in the game, and then we had to kind of make a decision who was ahead right there. The guys we have here, these guys, they should have been in high school at this time last year. So they don't have that body of work. They're still a work in progress. They're still growing. They're still making mistakes. So to say we know where they are in terms of finished product, it's hard to tell, and they still have a long way to go.
Great. Coach, thank you very much.
The comments of Ryan Day after the spring game, it struck me, Bill, like when he was asked about the quarterbacks and everything, kind of what you had said right before the break. Bill Conley, I'm Matt McCoy, Eric Rieser here as well as we continue with the best Buckeye coverage post-game show after the spring game. But basically said, yeah, we got to see them under live fire. This was a good little test, and we've seen a lot of reps during spring ball and scrimmages and stuff. But until they get into a game, you're not fully able to evaluate them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Remember this, too, at a spring game, you're not going to show a lot of stuff. You just show very basic things, both sides of the football. You know, we talk about the offense and the defense, though. You know, new defense, new coaches, more zone coverage, and things than last year's what they're talking about. And really, though, you didn't get to see that today. So there's a lot of things are still not being shown. The coaches are working on they're getting ready for the fall.
Fields, by the way, 4 for 13, but 131 yards, including 98-yarder. The 98-yarder certainly helps pad those stats, doesn't it?
Numbers, yeah, just a little bit.
By the way, that is a spring game record, and I actually have no idea if it is a spring game, but I can't imagine there's been a 99-yarder in a spring game. So probably something for the fans that were there that they'd never seen. Now, Matthew Baldwin played for both teams. His overall stats, if you combine them, 20 for 36, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did throw a couple of interceptions. Justin Fields, though, again, even with the limited amount of running you're able to do with the rules, the way they're set up in touch football, even with that, he still had 8 carries for 52 yards.
Right, and there were just, a lot of times where as soon as he got a hand on him,
They blew the whistle.
They blew the whistle.
For example, he's officially goes down as being sacked 4 times, but in a real game, would he have been sacked?
And there's, the guys up front aren't going to pin their ears back for their quarterback, especially who's got the black jersey on. If they touch him or so much as breathe on him, there goes their scholarship.
Right.
So a lot of these guys, it's just kind of see what he can do, just try to be as comfortable with being uncomfortable as possible, and that goes back to just staying in the pocket longer, having to do, we saw the zone read again today, which I didn't think would make an appearance until Justin Fields showed up, because I didn't know how Matthew Baldwin ran that offense. But for, looking at the whole body of work for Fields and Baldwin, it's tough to really say anything, but they did a good job.
Bill, do you think offensively next year, it's now Ryan Day as head coach and Urban Meyer's gone, are fans going to look at the offense and go, wow, that's totally different? Or is it still Ohio State's offense, Urban Meyer's offense, and maybe it's just tweaked a little bit? Is it going to be drastically different?
Well, I think it'll be different this way. I think you've really got to work hard on the running game, because I think you have to really establish that early, because these quarterbacks are going, with the lack of experience, if we would get behind in one of those early games by a couple touchdowns, you don't want a young quarterback having to fight through that. So you want to be able to do 2 things: play great defense, get the ball in good field position, and be able to run the football. And so the fans can't get impatient with the whole thing, because, like we said, Dwayne Haskins was unique.
Yep.
That's not what we have this year.
All right, going to take a break for the bottom of the hour. When we come back, Bill Conley, Eric Rieser with me, Matt McCoy, will continue to break down the spring game, talk about the 2019 Buckeyes. We're with you till 4 o'clock, so if you want to call us, 614-821-WTBN, 614-821-9886, 1-800-610-WTBN, or keep the tweets coming. I got a couple more. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. Back after this on the home of the best Buckeye coverage, 610 WTBN.
New coach, new quarterback, new season, same great coverage. The best Buckeye spring game coverage on News Radio 610 WTBN.
Matt McCoy, Bill Conley, Eric Rieser back with you, our best Buckeye coverage post-game show following the spring game. How about Drew Chrisman, by the way?
How about that, huh?
The Buckeye punter got down on a knee at halftime because he's the holder, as though he was going to let his girlfriend kick a field goal, but then on a knee pulled out a box with a ring on it, and they got themselves engaged.
Yeah, and that's something you don't rehearse, so he better had a good idea. She was going to say yes. That would have been terribly embarrassing.
Maybe the MVP of the spring game with that. Very good. And you're right. I mean, with 65,000, 70,000 people there, That would be kind of bad if she said no.
Yeah, if she had ended up running out of the open end of the stadium, that would not have been a good thing.
No, exactly. The Gray team won the game 35-17. A couple of other stats in there. Master Teague, who we just had a question about, 7 carries, 75 yards, a couple of touchdowns, running the football. Marcus Crowley, who you mentioned, the young freshman, 10 carries for 50 yards and a touchdown. Justin Fields, 8 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown. Fields just 4 of 13 passing, but 131 yards and that 98-yard touchdown to Ben Victor. Another guy who played pretty well was Jalen Gill, the kid out of Westerville South. 7 catches. He was the leading receiver in terms of catches. 7 catches for 95 yards. And I will say this, we were just talking about, Bill, can you tell stuff from the spring game? And you said, really, it's the 14 practices before. This one isn't valued any more or less. But Brian Hartline did say during camp, he was asked about a most improved receiver and somebody that's coming on, and Jalen Gill's a kid that he mentioned. So he seems to be working his way into legitimate playing time potentially next year.
Yeah, and that's also a big thing to break in a lot of times on special teams. And those guys, when they prove they can get the job done covering kicks and covering punts and things like that, then you get a chance to play your position in a spring game and do well. That's important. Coaches really look for that.
Dave on Twitter says, "How come we didn't see Jordan Fuller out there? Fuller has been injured, and there were a lot of guys that you didn't see.
Tough Borland you didn't see either.
Tough Borland, yeah.
And Coach Dave mentioned it. Some guys didn't get many reps at all because they
Chase Young barely played.
Yeah, you want to keep that stallion healthy. I'll tell you what, he's a good one.
That's the other thing when you try to evaluate off of this game. Like there was an offensive explosion in the second quarter, which was cool, and the fans got into it, Eric. But I mean, let's be fair. I mean, the 98-yard touchdown pass came against the third-team defense. So it was great, and it was a good throw, and it was on target, and Ben Victor made the catch. But typically, you're not. I don't know how much you can take out of that looking forward to the fall because of who the competition was.
Yeah, I don't think other than it was a nice moment for the fans. There's just nothing there because that kind of. I mean, look, it was a great throw, a great catch, obviously, but. Yeah, and I think it goes to my earlier point of where he was just trying to get him comfortable, and then in the second quarter, like we saw, he was letting him air it out more because, hey, all right, so we got this kind of out of the way, or you got a couple handoffs, some zone read action, but throw the ball down the field a couple times, give the fans a little something, show this arm talent, because all four of the guys have arm talent, and so you saw that on display, and that's great, but yeah, nothing.
Is there anything to, Bill, with a young guy like a Jalen Gill, who redshirted last year, really talented player, of, okay, let's see how he does in front of an audience? You can count on one hand the number of schools that are going to have 65, 70,000, years before Ohio State's had over 100,000 at a spring football game. Is that an advantage in terms of, does that add to any evaluation tool that maybe a Purdue can't have where they got, 8,000 people there?
Absolutely. It's a stage. It's not a stage like game day, but it's the second best. And show that in front of your teammates, too. That shows them they have a confidence in you when you make plays like that. And, there's some guys, some young freshmen, a kid on the defense that I thought looked exceptional today. I saw 97 out there. Hey, there's 97 back on the field.
Noah Potter
from
Mentor.
Yeah. And true freshman. So, you make a couple plays early in your career in front of a crowd in Ohio State. It really gets everybody's attention.
We haven't really talked that much about the defense, but how much of, take me through the spring. You've got a completely new defensive coaching staff, save Larry Johnson. He's the only one that's new. How long does it take? We're talking about new players meshing together. How long does it take Greg Madison, Jeff Hafley, the co-defensive coordinators, Al Washington, all the new defensive pieces from a coaching staff standpoint? How long does it take for them to get a rhythm, so to speak, and learn how to work together?
Well, that's funny you mentioned that because one of the three things I thought was most important today is get the defensive staff working together. See, you have to make a decision once you get into the season. what guys are going to be on the sideline, what guys are going to be up in the box, and what's the communication going to be? Who's going to be communicating with who? And that's really important. Now, the fortunate thing is these guys have all been around the block, but they had to work together and get those things done is very, very important. I thought today was a big step for those guys.
One thing Ryan Day also said, Eric, was that from an offensive standpoint, in the fall, he's going to be the play caller. But today, and when they scrimmaged in the spring, he had Kevin Wilson, also Mike Yursich, the new passing game coordinator, calling plays. And he said, I just want everybody to have that experience. Now, Kevin Wilson, I mean, he's got plenty of that experience. But, there's a lot for the coaches to evaluate in terms of evaluating themselves, too.
And I feel like that's what, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, is what Day served primarily as today, was he's the evaluator of everything, more so than a play caller, more so than a scheme guy, was how does so-and-so look in this situation? How are these coaches communicating with their position coaches, with their assistants? How are we getting calls in at the correct time? He was even talking at halftime, like, well, I know it's a running clock, but I'll stop it if I want to. And that's just his job, is to manage all of that, because when you get into the season, and again, I know I called it a cheese board slate the first part of the year, but FAU's a real opponent, and Lane Kiffin's going to want to beat Ohio State. And so at that time, he serves as the head coach. This is the chance he gets to just figure out everything or get a better sense in the horseshoe.
Yeah, I think he's evaluating everything. I think, you take... He said during the season, or during the spring, he says, we got a great tradition here. We're not changing many things, But believe me, there's a day way, and he's going to want to do it the day way. And part of that is evaluating all that. You said something interesting, how the players respond to the coaches, too. You take a guy like Brian Hartline. Here's a guy that has a lot of respect for the players. The guy's been there, played in the league, and you could tell the players really respect him. And Brian's not going to be a guy probably just going to make me suggestions on plays to run, because he's still new at the college game as a coach. But he's a guy that can serve a major role of getting with the players when they come off the field and things like that. So Ryan Day's evaluating all that. And when you can't do that when you're just strictly an offensive coordinator, because you're playing what happens next series and things like that. So he's got to get a lot of that done now.
I wonder what he said to Garrett Wilson after that touchdown grab. Any coaching going on there?
Yeah.
Do more of that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, keep doing that, because that was...
I'll tell you what he said. Whatever team came in second on him recruiting-wise, he said, man, I bet you're glad you didn't go to Texas A&M or whoever it was.
Yeah, that from a, play standpoint, that might have been, for me, the most eye-popping play of what we saw today.
Well, that showed athleticism. That showed a great vertical.
I mean, the coverage wasn't that... wasn't
coverage.
Bad. It was... Seven Banks was on the coverage. Who's a guy you're probably going to see in the fall. He's not first string, but nickel packages and stuff. You're going to see him. So it was a legitimate, good player that had good coverage, and he just went up and made a play.
And that's where you can start establishing that trust between Fields and Garrett Wilson, where as a quarterback, if I'm putting the ball there, I know my guy's going to go up over everybody and get that. And it's not impossible to do at a place like the Woody Hayes Athletic Center or inside their big old dome, but to do outside at the Horseshoe on a Saturday afternoon, as close to replicating a live fire game situation as you can was today. And a play like that really helps you, moving forward. You mentioned a live fire game. Steve on Twitter has a question about that, which we will get to. We got to go to a break. We do have phone lines open if you would like to call. Maybe you're getting back to the car after watching the spring game. 614-821-WTVN, 614-821-9886, or 1-800-610-WTVN. If you want to be like Steve and tweet at me, I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. Back with more after this. Bill Conley, Eric Rieser with me, Matt McCoy, on our Best Buckeye Coverage postgame show on 610 WTVN. 61,102, by the way, is the official number of the spring game attendance. Matt McCoy with you, Bill Conley, Eric Rieser, as we wrap up the spring game. We heard Ryan Day's post-game press conference earlier. If you missed it, we'll play back bits and pieces of that throughout the course of the show. We're with you till 4 o'clock. You can tweet at me. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. Some of you have. I've got some more Twitter questions. You can also call us with any reaction to the spring game or questions about what you're going to see in the fall under Ryan Day as the Buckeye head coach.
614-821-WTVN, 614-821-9886, or 1-800-610-WTVN. I mentioned going into the break about the format of the game today, and Steve asked this question, how hard is it to evaluate the defense today when they're not allowed to tackle? Go Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. And you see it everywhere in college football. You see it in pro football. I was at the Destroyers scrimmage this morning over at Bo Jackson.
Arena football,
football, same thing there. They don't take them to the ground or anything like that. But what you've seen in practices in this month is that you have so many practices that you're allowed to tackle. Not very many. I mean, that's in the NCAA rules. But you do enough that you can get a pretty good idea who your best guys are. And so you might be going through a practice and all of a sudden, boom, okay, this is a live period. For 5 minutes you go full go and that type of thing. That's about all you can do. But again, the advantage defensively is that most of the guys that we're talking about have already played in games. They know they can do certain things. What they're got to get used to is a new scheme.
Mm-hmm. So when you have a practice like this where they were just thudding up and for the most part not tackling, when you are evaluating the defense and you're looking at the game film, the spring game film, what is the defensive staff looking for?
Well, I think you're looking for, it depends on what position. You're looking up front, you're looking for quickness off the football. You got to beat the offensive man. So it's quickness off the football.
Like, for example, you mentioned Noah Potter to you flash today because he was getting into the backfield a lot.
Right. Yeah. He got to the edge of the offensive lineman really quick, used his hands well, put pass rush techniques. You're looking at the technical part of the game. You're looking on the running secondary and linebackers. One of the things we talked a lot about last year, Matt, was the angle of attacking the football. Is everybody at the right pursuit angle? Is everybody at the right converged angle on the football? And that's something you can tell without tackling. Are they still getting off blocks and coming at the proper angle?
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting, Eric, too, in the fall with all these new defensive coaches. Is it going to happen immediately where this is just a really good, aggressive new defense? Is there going to be adjustment time? I don't know. I guess that we're going to find out those answers in the fall.
The whole thing's a work in progress. And I think also today, you kind of got to see how Greg Madison and Jeff Hafley play together. I mean, it's just how in a game situation, or what kind of adjustments are you making? All right, how's he calling things? Would I rather be up in the booth to see all of this? And I think to whoever asked a question on Twitter,
Steve.
Jerome Baker actually tweeted, "Don't tell me spring games don't matter." He had a picture from his play. He had a really nice one-handed interception. I think it was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "This play was arguably the best play it was the play that started my career at Ohio State. Take advantage of every opportunity you have to put on that scarlet and gray." And for a guy like Jerome Baker, who nobody had really heard of until he made play in the spring game, and then he had an incredible season after that. Now he plays for the Miami Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of the guys that haven't been getting as many looks as they might think, one or two plays could change it, and that could start at the spring game.
Well, Josh and Wint, for example, at safety. We know Brendan White's on one side and Jordan Fuller, but you're always looking for depth back there, and he comes up and makes a couple of picks today.
Right. It's like it's like auditioning for a play or a movie. I mean, you get your chance, you got to get the job done. When you get a chance in front of the home crowd to do it, take your advantage. More
of your questions coming up as we're going to be with you till 4 o'clock. So you can fill up the phone lines at 821-WTVN, 821-9886, or keep the comments. Thank you so much. Got a lot of social media reaction to the game. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. Back after this, our best Buckeye coverage spring game post-game show on News Radio 610 WTVN. Matt McCoy, Bill Conley, Eric Rieser back with you as we continue with our best Buckeye coverage post-game show following the spring game as we react to things that we saw in the spring game. Bill, we were just talking about the defense. How different do you think it's going to look next year? No longer a Greg Schiano aggressive man-to-man all the time. They talked about maybe they're going to change coverages. Jeff Hafley talked about that maybe a little bit more. Is it going to be a drastically different defense with Greg Madison and Jeff Hafley calling the shots?
We hope so. Let's face it. We gave up way too many big plays. And, defense is a game of – I always thought when you run the blitz and you play line-man coverage, it's a game of timing on defense. When do you do it? You can't do it every play. You can't do it the majority of the time. You got to do it in situations where you think it'll make a big play for you. Like, for example, if the offense has the ball on a hash mark and your quarterback's right-handed and you're on the offensive left hash, you bring a boundary corner from the blind side. So it's all timing what to do. The most important thing is not to give up big plays and create turnovers. I was talking to Coach today back in the early part of spring a little about the silver bullets and the tradition of the silver bullets and how we started that thing. And there was such an emphasis put on causing and creating turnovers. So you want to do that, and you can better chance of doing that when you have more people running to the football. And if you play zone coverage, you can converge on the football and practice those things a lot. When you count on playing man coverage and hope you get to a quarterback, and if you don't get there, the chances are very high that you're going to have a big play against
It's so interesting because last year's team had a historic quarterback, a historic offense, quite honestly, and they went 13-1. They won the Rose Bowl. They smashed their rival. They won a Big Ten championship. And it feels like, to me, from a fan standpoint and reaction we get, it is the most underappreciated 13-1 team that ended up finishing third or fourth in the polls that we've ever had. And I think it's just because of the defense gave up so many big plays, and you had to outscore teams like the Maryland 52-51 game. That was a great team. They just had a leaky defense at times last year.
Well, the Big Ten and Ohio State's always been looked on as a great defensive league. I mean, you talk about great linebackers, great defensive backs, Jack Tatum's of the world and guys like that who will come up and, put the wood on you. And that wasn't this team. So you want to win games, but you feel awful good as a coach when you win the game physically also, not by simply scoring more points than the other guy.
Yeah, and there were some ugly wins last year, Eric, and obviously the 49-20 game is probably what kept them out of the playoff.
Purdue's the biggest stinker, but there were just some other things, with Coach Meyer and how Haskins and the Tate Martell package, and there were just some things off the field that I think that kind of put a stink on what was one of the best seasons in recent memory. Because look, they won the Rose Bowl, and it was kind of like, okay, great. It was the general feeling.
The other thing was
the case.
The other thing was it took them so long. I mean, the second last game of the season they beat Maryland 52-51, but something happened the Michigan week, and they played their best football finally the last three. Even though the Rose Bowl ended up 28-23, I mean, they had that game in hand. They waited so long to play their best football. Had they been playing like that midseason, Eric, maybe they would have gotten into the playoffs.
Yeah, and again, losing obviously the best defensive player maybe Ohio State's had in the past decade.
Exactly right.
Throws a little bit of a stink on it as well. So, yeah, I think last season, Dwayne Haskins was appreciated, but I think just the beginning part of this year, fans are going to really understand just how special of a talent he was because, look, these two quarterbacks, whether it is Matthew Baldwin or Justin Fields, are young, are guys that haven't had a lot of live fire in-game reps. And so for patience, I think needs to be key in preaching to Buckeye fans as we kind of enter into 2019 that's brand new for everybody almost.
I agree with that. I will say this, though, Bill. I remember saying the same thing like, hey, you're going to have to be patient with Dwayne Haskins. He's going to make some mistakes. And he really didn't. But I will say it again. More than likely, Eric's right. You're going to probably have to be patient with whatever the quarterback may be.
Yeah, and you have to have some patience, let's face it, with the offensive line, too.
Exactly
because
right.
We got
You're
some
right.
new faces up there and some guys that are really having good practices. They had a little injury problem in the past. But, yeah, you're right.
Well, I mean, Thayer Mumford didn't play today. He's one of the returning offensive linemen, and we'll be back. But you mentioned that, and Ryan Day got asked in the press conference, and again, we'll play bits and pieces coming up later. If he had a biggest concern at offensive line depth, is what he said. And you can never have enough offensive line depth.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny things have changed with the new types of offenses and things. The emphasis at colleges the last 20 years is you always had a lot of offensive line depth and have a defensive lineman that could get the job done. But it's completely different. You have to have depth at the defensive line because of the speed of the game, keeping fresh bodies in and stuff like that. And playing offensive line against that type of good athletes today is a lot tougher than it's ever been.
Question on Twitter about what we'll see offensively from Dave. We will get to that when we come back after the top of the hour break. Matt McCoy, Bill Conley, and Eric Rieser with you for one more hour. Our best Buckeye coverage spring game, post-game show on 610 WTVN.
The best Buckeye spring game coverage on News Radio 610 WTVN.
140 days till the Buckeyes open the season.
Just around the corner.
It's getting there. That's Bill Conley. I'm Matt McCoy. Eric Rieser with you here on News Radio 610 WTVN. I guess this afternoon, Sports Radio 610 WTVN, as we talk a little bit more about the spring game. Heard from Ryan Day last hour. We've got some player comments that are going to be coming up after the spring game, which was a 35-17 Gray win. Some numbers for you. Again, throwing the football. Now, Matthew Baldwin played on both teams. Combined, he was 20 for 36, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Justin Fields only threw the ball 13 times. He completed only 4. One of them, though, was a 98-yard touchdown to Ben Victor, 131 yards. Even in the scrimmage where basically was touch football for the quarterbacks, you were able to see a little bit of what Justin Fields brings to the table as a runner. 8 carries, 52 yards, and a touchdown. The leading rusher in the game was Master Teague, 7 carries, 75 yards with a couple of touchdowns. The leading receiver in terms of catches was Jalen Gill, 7 catches for 95 yards, 61,102 on hand for that. I was mentioning going into the break that I had a Twitter question from Dave about the offense, and it's more of a comment, Bill, and see what you think. He says, this is from Dave, I think you'll see Ryan Day run a J.T. Barrett-like offense with Fields. If Baldwin were to end up getting in, it would be more Dwayne Haskins-like.
I don't know about that. JT was kind of a special guy at that. I think you want your quarterback to, get better at the basics of throwing the football. So, he'll put the ball away on his own, I'm sure. And he showed the ability in the open field today to elude some tackles. They didn't get even close to getting a hand on him.
I would say that if Fields ends up getting the job, which we all expect, Eric, it is going to be different than what we saw with Dwayne Haskins. They're not going to let him sit back there and pick teams apart because that's not his strength, and it would be unfair to Justin Fields. He will tailor the offense to Justin Fields.
The football player Justin Fields is. That's not the football player Justin Fields has ever been, and that's not the football player Justin Fields is going to be. And I don't think that's why Ryan Day brought him from Georgia. I just think that you're going to have to retool a lot of things because, like, Dwayne Haskins could stand in there under fire. His first instinct wasn't to run, and I don't know if that's Justin Fields's because we just don't have a lot of tape on him. But I think he would be, first read's not there, second read's not there, I'm gone. Where if you had Haskins, who was the field general, who could look first, second, not there, third, boom, I've got him. Just because they're just different football players.
Do you think, and I'm going back several months, but the Tate Martell transfer, did he transfer because he was concerned about what the offense was going to look like with Ryan Day as the head coach and maybe this isn't what I signed up for with Urban Meyer, or did he transfer because Justin Fields was coming and he didn't know if he could beat him out?
I think it's probably a combination. I would not surprise me. I have nothing to back this up at all, but it would not surprise me if the coaching staff had a serious talk with him and said, you may want to look for another place because it's going to be tough for you to find the field as a starter. So I think it's a combination.
You do have, you've been
those
coaching at a high level.
Sure.
Not that you want to run a kid off, but you do have serious, true conversations with him.
Yeah, and let's face it, Martell, he said all the right things. Was saying all the right things until the last minute. Then things were not all the right.
And I think that's part of the negativity that I've sensed. And look, I wish him well at Miami, and he got himself eligible right away. I hope he does very well. But a lot of Buckeye fans were turned off, Eric, and I think it's because of what Bill said. Is I'm gonna, he's gonna come here. I'm gonna compete. It's my job. And then when he did the transfer became official, it was like, all right, never mind, I'm out.
Yeah, it was all the noisy talk. It was the stuff on Twitter and then the heading to Miami. And I don't get that. I don't get the negativity towards Tate Martell. He's doing what's in his best interest.
Exactly right.
And we kind of hoped that was, to Bill's point, what was said between Ryan Day and Tate Martell was, look, it's just going to be difficult for you here, because Tate Martell was an Urban Meyer guy, and this is Ryan Day. Not to borrow from his Twitter, but this is Ryan Day time. This is Ryan Day's team. This is Ryan Day's offense. And he looked at Justin Fields, he looked at Matthew Baldwin, and he looked at Tate Martell. And I again, nothing to back this up, but you would think that he said, all right, Fields most comfortable with, also Matthew Baldwin. Sorry, Tate.
Yeah.
And that's just like Urban said. One of my favorite quotes from him is, that's life in the big city. This is the premier college football program in the country.
Well, I can tell you that last year, our friend and best Buckeye coverage analyst, Stan Jackson, before Justin Fields was going to transfer here, he was telling me, like, everybody's marking down that Tate Martell is going to be the guy if Dwayne Haskins lead. And he said, I'm not sure, man. He goes, I think Matthew Baldwin might end up beating him out. So it wasn't a lock, even if Fields had not necessarily come. It was not a lock that Tate Martell would have ended up being the starting quarterback.
Exactly. Here's the thing that all Division I coaches face now in the world of transfers, and the NCAA making it easier to transfer.
Easier and making kids eligible right away. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You will not have many programs that will have two great quarterbacks at the same time, unless there's a big separation. A guy's a freshman, a guy's a senior, and he's going out. But if they're within a year or two of each other, they're not going to want to sit behind anybody anymore.
All right. How about in case you missed some of Ryan Day's post-game comments, so let's feed a couple of them to you. First of all, the quarterbacks today. Again, let me go over the numbers. Matthew Baldwin, 20 for 36, 246, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Justin Fields only threw it 13 times, 4 completions, 131 yards, but ran it 8 times for 52 yards and a touchdown. And Ryan Day was asked about the separation at this point as they come out of the spring in that quarterback position battle.
I don't really know right now. I'm going to keep looking at it. I know I keep saying that to you, and everybody wants to know. But, again, I don't think right now that we're going to kind of make a decision on that. I think it'll continue through the preseason. And right now we only have 3 quarterbacks, and Danny's our 4th. But, imagine if someone, steps off a curb and hurts their ankle tomorrow, we got 2, And so these guys have to keep going. They're probably all going to have to play one way, shape, or form along the way. So they'll keep pulling for each other. And as long as that room gets strong, that's the key.
Bill, I think we all see that probably Fields is ahead, but I guess there's no reason from a coaching standpoint on April 13th to declare somebody that's a starting quarterback.
Yeah, there's no reason to be. Too many things can happen within the next couple of months. You know what's going to happen in the offseason, things like that. I tell you something. I saw the kid, Jack Miller.
Yeah.
I saw him in
he is a quarterback recruit, by the way, from Arizona that's coming to Ohio State.
Him in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
They had I helped to work an Adidas National 7-on-7 camp, and I saw him out there. And I tell you what, he's an impressive looking guy, tall kid. Throws a strong ball and good command of the offense and things like that. So, they're having a pretty good one coming in.
I will say this, we were just talking about Tate Martell leaving. The one thing that it does do, Eric, is, just like Ryan Day was saying, if somebody steps off a curve, with due respect to Chris Chuganoff, I mean, how many times in college football have we seen teams go through 2 quarterbacks and be on a third? It's the national championship season, for heaven's sake. Ohio State, Cardale Jones was a third quarterback. They don't have a lot of depth at that position. They really do not going in. And I guess if there's a danger, you hope no one gets hurt, obviously, Eric, but they're really not that deep in quarterback talent, even though I think everybody likes Justin Fields and Matthew Baldwin. After that, I don't know.
You got to plan for the worst and hope for the best. Because, things can happen. I mean, Justin Fields could practice on Monday, could step awkwardly or plant awkwardly and gone.
Yeah.
And Matthew Baldwin had his knee injury last year, could flare up again. And then it's Chuganov time, baby. So, you have to, I think, have that. And I don't think it was ever, when the conversation was had between Chris Chuganoff and the coaches at Ohio State, was ever, you can come in and start. Was, when you come up to Columbus, we're going to need you at depth. We're going to need some of that experience. Come help us win a national championship. It's like with basketball, graduate transfers. Guys aren't going to come in and drop, a double-double a game, but they're guys that if you need can really, really help this team out. And not only in a game standpoint, but from a practice standpoint as well. I'm sure just because Chugunov's more experienced in life and in football than Fields or Matthew Baldwin, he's got practice habits. He's got film room habits, study session habits that he can pass down to these guys that without him, there's that void without that leader. And that's just almost as important as, slinging the ball on the field.
That's one thing you'll see in common in every spring game today. They're showing on TV stations. All the quarterbacks will be in some different color jersey.
Yeah,
you can't afford to lose them in a spring.
Were you on the staff when Tomczak got hurt?
Oh yeah.
Mike Tomczak, for our younger listeners, starting quarterback for Ohio State, and it must have been he was going to be the starter and broke his leg in the spring game.
Yeah,
and. Under Coach Bruce.
As a young high school coach, I remember listening to Johnny Majors, who was the head coach at Pitt, speaking at a clinic over in Pittsburgh. And somebody asked him, what's one advice you give a young coach? He said, don't lose them in practice.
Yeah.
And that was way back. And that's when you went a lot harder than
where is the line drawn in terms of that? And we saw what we saw today in terms of not tackling these guys with – you need to be physical. You need to practice tackling and everything to be ready for a game day Saturday. Now, this is different. I mean, it's April 13th. But the amount of physicality, Bill, you need to have to get your team ready in practice versus let's not do anything stupid and get anybody hurt. I mean, are those conversations that the coaching staff has all the time?
All the time. You watch it, you're recruiting a kid out of high school. You can tell if he's a physical kid or not, pretty much. But, man, when you got to do it in a game situation, and it's tough to practice that because the size and speed of athletes today, the collisions are such more violent than they ever were. So you just got to be smart about it. And but I think that's also why you see more missed tackles today than you used to. And some of the man coverage things is another part of it. It was all keep the ball in front of you and break forward to make the plays, get more guys there, create turnovers, all that stuff you always talk about. But I mean, this stuff is a very fine line between, being physical practice but not too physical. But the one thing I think I say this as a defensive coach, let's coach the defensive side of the ball, is that the one thing about not taking guys to the ground, it helps you practice stripping the ball, and it helps the offensive there for secure the ball more. So some things you get out of it, but you can't go full blast 100 miles an hour every day, every practice.
What's interesting, Eric, is it was just 1 year ago at the spring game, the quarterback battle was Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was still here. He had not transferred to LSU and become their starter. And Ryan Day, after this game, was asked about the quarterback battle now, that he has Justin Fields and Matthew Baldwin, and asked the difference between last year's quarterback battle, Haskins-Burrow, and this year's quarterback battle, Fields-Baldwin.
When you had Joe and Dwayne here, they didn't have a body of work on the field, but they had a body of work practicing. And the coaches and myself and we had gone through it, and we kind of knew what we had. We saw them in the game, and then we had to kind of make a decision who was ahead right there. The guys we have here, these guys, they should have been in high school at this time last year. So they don't have that body of work. They're still a work in progress. They're still growing. They're still making mistakes. So to say we know where they are in terms of finished product, it's hard to tell, and they still have a long way to go.
Yeah, even though Dwayne was inexperienced, Joe Burrow inexperienced in terms of starts, they both had gotten game action. Haskins did what he did against Michigan that year. These guys totally different, right, Bill?
Yeah, and I think the coaching staff last year honestly felt they could probably win games with both of those guys.
Right.
Because they were good. It was and you go to practice, it was very apparent they were both really good.
Yep.
But a different story this year completely.
And you saw it with Joe Burrow. He went down to Baton Rouge, and didn't take long for him to be really, really good for the Tigers.
Yep.
So you had that kind of quality that you knew what you were getting with both of those guys, and you really don't know what you're getting with either of these two guys just because there isn't much college tape on them.
All right, we are back with more of our best Buckeye coverage post-game show coming up in just a couple of minutes. Matt McCoy, Bill Conley, Eric Rieser here. You can continue the tweets coming at me. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. We're taking your questions. Also, if you want to call, 614-821-WTVN, 614-821-9886. Back after this on Sports Radio 610 WTVN. Matt McCoy, Bill Conley, Eric Rieser with you. It is our best Buckeye coverage spring game, post-game show. We're with you until 4 o'clock. It was a 35-17 Gray win over the Scarlet. Some, I guess, key plays. Garrett Wilson's touchdown catch was certainly an eye-popper out there. There was a 98-yard touchdown pass from Fields to Ben Victor. Again, it was against the third-team defense, but still you like to see it was a good ball, good catch, and things like that. Some of the highlights of the game. Master T, we had a question about him earlier, had a nice game, 7 carries, 75 yards, a couple of touchdowns in this game. A question on Twitter, actually a comment here from Jason. I still feel like the defensive line is the strength of the Ohio State defense going into next year. What do you think the strength of the Ohio State offense will be? First of all, let's take the first comment. Do you still think the defensive line is the strength of the defense?
Absolutely. And like we said, before the last break, that's the big change the last 20 years in college football. You got to recruit a lot of speed.
Isn't that remarkable? Because I would tend to agree with that. And now I know Nick Bosa was hurt most of the year, but still, I mean, you're losing Draymond Jones. I mean, they lost a lot of guys, but
Young,
exactly
Cooper.
Right. Exactly. And then, I mean, you mentioned Noah Potter looked really good. I mean, they have guys coming up. Yeah.
Well, and I think also one of the things that
Zach Harrison.
Yeah, exactly. Last year was the linebacking core, and really the way they're talking about the defense now is almost going to another hybrid position called the bullet, where you might take another linebacker off the field. So I agree with the guy who asked the question. I think that the defensive line is front, and it's very obvious offensively it's still the wide receiver position. As many as we lost,
which again is remarkable because you got Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin, who are, if you look at some draft analysts, they're flirting with being first-round picks, and Johnny Dixon's certainly going to get drafted. But I don't disagree with you, Bill. I mean, they still are deep at that wide receiver position. I mean, KJ Hill's back. I mean, they're, Ben Victor, we saw a 98-yard touchdown pass. You forgot about Austin Mack because he got hurt in the Purdue game, didn't play the last half of the year, but he's going to be in the NFL. And then Garrett Wilson's making plays. They got guys still.
And guys that can make big runs after the catch. Yards after the catch are so important. They make acrobatic catches. We know that. We saw that all the time. But they made yards. Michigan game example, great yards after they caught the ball.
Okay, how about, we mentioned Justin Fields' day, 8 carries for 52 yards and a touchdown. Again, hard to evaluate him when he's not allowed to do a lot of running, but it tells you what he can do. And only 4 for 13 throwing the football with a touchdown. He met with reporters after the game. Here is Justin Fields.
Spring overall, how do you feel like you performed? Overall, spring, there were ups and downs. That just comes with, especially as growing pains. So I just have to keep improving and keep working, and I think we'll be good for the season. What was it like being out there today with all the fans? The fans are great. I haven't seen fans like I said. It's definitely different up here, and I can tell the fans are into OSU football. So
what do you need to improve at the most, Justin?
I think I need to improve every what's the word I'm looking for? Every aspect of my game. Running, passing, just getting better. I feel like there's always a place to improve, no matter how good you get. So I think just every aspect.
Justin, the way that you came to Ohio State with the transfer in, a lot of people viewed you as like a immediate solution to losing Dwayne, and that might be to losing Dwayne. What's it like being in a situation where that is the expectation, but also, still being so early in your career and like you said, having to improve in all the areas that you have to improve on?
So what's it like?
Yeah, just kind of describe the process.
I'm not trying to necessarily fill Dwayne's shoes. I'm just trying to come to Ohio State and be the best quarterback and just do what I can, whatever I can to help this team win. So I'm not worried about, the expectations or anything like that. I'm just going to focus on the team and myself and just doing the best I can.
When Coach Day describes you guys as a work in progress at quarterback, do you have a sense right now
how much further there is for you to go? Like how much is in your bank already, and how much more work?
Yeah, I feel like I've only scratched the surface, so I feel like, I mean, of course, like if I had to grade myself out today, it would be like a C+. I mean, I'm very hard on myself, so I'm kind of a perfectionist, but I definitely just see it scratching the surface, and I definitely can see us having a bright future.
When you grade yourself down on that to that C, what stands out in your mind that you
stands out? I mean, it's just like I know I can do better. I've done better at practice, but of course there's always room to improve, so I'm just going to continue to work.
What settled you in today after the first 2 drives? I know after that, I mean, 4 straight touchdown drives with you doing that. I know it's a spring game, but still, was there a play that settled you in?
I mean, it's kind of just when you get the rhythm, getting the rhythm, and just kind of when you find that rhythm, I feel like all quarterbacks have to kind of get in the rhythm and get into the feel of the game, so that kind of helped me a little bit.
The Justin Fields comments after the spring game. And, Bill, one of the questions that got asked in there is you taking over for Dwayne Haskins. And I liked his answer. Like, I'm not trying to replace Dwayne Haskins. I'm just trying to be the next quarterback at Ohio State. Because if you try to live up to, as Eric said, a historic year, chances are you're going to fail at that. He's just got to be Justin Fields, right?
Yeah, I tell you, that was a mature answer and a very good interview for a first-year quarterback. And basically he said the things that Coach wants you to say. You know, I got to get better at the little things. I'm just scratching the surface. I want to help our team out. So he answered things just the right way.
The other thing you have to remember, too, Eric, is we've been talking about their inexperience. But this is a guy that's been on campus for, 3 months? He's just scratching the surface, to use his term, in learning the offense, too. I mean, he's got a lot of catching up to do to learn every aspect of this offense. And so even when the season starts, Eric, there's probably some growing pains in that area of football, too.
And again, that's where patience comes in, because you've got a guy from Georgia who was at Georgia last year and is going, at Ohio State for 3 months. And so it's not just the playbook. It's everything Ohio State. He's drinking from a fire hose. And that's going to be the case if he's named starter. The first couple weeks of the season, they're going to be growing pains, because that's just what happens with a quarterback that Ryan Day even said was supposed to be in high school this time last year.
Real quick before we hit the break, how much of the playbook do you think legitimately he's learned at this point? You know what I mean?
Well, if you're a quarterback, you got to learn a lot quick. So you build on what you have in your system. So, what he'll do, they'll add things as it go, but you, as a quarterback, when you first are interviewed by coaches and brought in, they can tell you pretty quick if that guy's got it mentally. So you've got to be able to learn quickly as a quarterback.
Among the things we saw at the spring game today was a marriage proposal. The guy that that did it, and the guy that got the yes answer, maybe the highlight of the spring game.
Big play of the game, no
exactly. You will hear more from that coming up. Keep the tweets coming at me too. Very much appreciate all the comments and stuff. You're helping drive the show today. It's our best Buckeye coverage post-game show. Matt McCoy with Bill Conley, Eric Rieser back after this on News Radio 610 WTVN.
The best Buckeye spring game coverage on News Radio 610 WTVN.
Matt McCoy, Bill Conley, and Eric Rieser with you for another half hour. Our thanks to Lori Schmidt. She's why you were able to hear Ryan Day live and some of these player interviews, doing her typical fantastic work. Should point out, by the way, I know this is a best Buckeye coverage post-game show, but the Blue Jackets right now up 2-0 on Tampa Bay. The story of the NHL, a Tampa Bay team that won 62 games. And Nikita Kucherov, who is their, led the NHL in points this year and one of their strong weapons, ain't going to play in Game 3. He got suspended, if you saw the game, kind of a cheap hit on Marcus Nudavara late in the game, started a fight. The NHL has suspended him 1 game. Just looking on Twitter, a lot of people are saying it should have been more. But he is out tomorrow night, so the Jackets up 2-0. Eric?
Yeah, baby.
And now they got Kucherov out of the lineup.
Well, the thing with Kucherov is he's not a repeat offender like Tom Wilson.
Yes.
So, had that been a Tom Wilson who did that hit, you probably just throw him in a pit. But for Kucherov, the 1 game is fair for that situation. It was a really chippy game last night, but this Blue Jackets team in the past 5 periods have played as good or not better than they've played all season.
Yeah, incredible.
And Bob, that's a $10 million Bob.
Exactly right. We were wondering about playoff Bob. He had never allowed
I don't want playoff Bob. No.
fewer than 3 goals in a game last night. Only gave up 1. And really, after the first period, he was outstanding in the second and third period.
Yeah,
in game
his
1.
second period, game 1, was the best I've ever seen him play.
Yeah, outstanding.
And that's definitely something to where the conversation's going to be a lot happier.
Yeah,
based off of just these first 2 games at the end of this series, however it goes.
Right time to peak.
It absolutely is. They won 7 of their last 8 to get into the playoffs, and maybe they have found the right time to peak. Just like the Buckeyes last year. At the end of the year, we struggled. I mean, you say struggle. They only lost 1 game, but they hit their stride at the end of the year. Bill, I got to ask you. You played at Ohio State under Woody, coached with Earl and Coop and Tress and everything. Drew Chrisman today, during the spring game at halftime, obviously had his marriage proposal ready, and Ryan Day said, yeah, I was aware of what was going to happen, and it ended up being pretty cool. If you had gone to Woody Hayes and said, Woody, halftime, spring game, I want to propose to my girlfriend, would that have gone over very well?
Well, Woody would have looked at you very simply and said, well, that's fine, and you get married right after the game because you're not playing anymore.
I'll have plenty of free time.
I was thinking, what all the coaches I had played for or worked with, and Earl would have he'd been mad, obviously, and Coop probably would have said, Billy, what are they doing out there?
Yeah.
And Tress would have probably just stared at him. So it's a little different thing in today's world, but hey, he had the play of the game.
Yeah. I like this comment that we have on Twitter. Before, we're going to hear from Drew Chrisman, but I have to fake Greg Madison, the new defensive coordinator, on Twitter says, Matt McCoy, did you see how we eliminated all those big plays? Well, except for that 98-yarder.
Michigan-esque defense.
Now, I will say it is. That was the third-team defense there. But,
is he just salty he didn't get his gold? He didn't get gold pants on Friday like everybody else did.
That's
the
right.
Sitting there going, "That was my defense. You put 62 points on." All right.
They gave out the gold pants in Big Ten range.
Yeah, today one thing kind of lost in the story today. Today is a big recruiting day.
It was.
They have a lot of recruits in, and to see those guys get their Rose Bowl and Big Ten championship rings. Kind of impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I would say 61,000 for an Ohio State spring game with nice weather is a little bit, to be honest with you, disappointing. I hate to say that because we're used to 100,000 and for whatever reason. However, as I said, you can count on one hand the number of schools are going to have 61,000 people at a spring game. Bill, does that make an impression on kids when they come in for a glorified practice and see that kind of support?
Absolutely. I mean, to see that type of crowd, and I remember Chris Carter. Chris played for Middletown, and now we were up here at Ohio State, and Chris dropped the first pass that was thrown to him. Earl loves to tell this story, and they came right back through the same pass, and he caught it the next time and set all kinds of records, of course. And so Earl asked him, he said, "Chris, why'd you drop that ball?" He said, "Coach, there's more people here in the whole city of Middletown." So, that's what it's like to play in that stadium. You have to bring your A game.
Didn't Tom Tupa drop his first?
Oh, he dropped his first punt too.
First snap to him as a punter. Because Earl again, God rest his soul, we're coming up in a year since we lost him. But he would also tell the story about how he was really looking forward to seeing Tupa punt because he'd been killing the ball. He's one of the best punters Ohio State's ever had. And he's like looking in the air for the ball, like, where's the ball? And then he looks back and he dropped the snap. Yes. Hopefully none of that will happen in the fall for some of these guys.
One of the great stories on that one, too, is that Glenn Mason was a punting coach. I was a long snapper coach. Glenn was the punting coach. And Tom hit his first punt in practice about 80 yards or something unbelievable. And so Mace started to go up to say something to him about his technique or something. And Earl said, "Mason, don't you ever say a word to that kid."
Exactly. Well, if he stopped talking to him, because the rest of his career was pretty darn good. Speaking of punters, Drew Chrisman with maybe the play of the day with that marriage proposal that we just talked about. He was asked about it, obviously, after the game. Here's Drew Chrisman talking with reporters.
It was honestly perfect. I couldn't have asked for it to go any smoother or better.
So did Avery suspect that?
No.
Or did she not
She had
know
no idea. Honestly, I have no idea how she didn't know. I feel like everybody else knew, and I she was kind of locked away this past week because word spread quick as soon as I started mentioning it. So just about everyone on the team knew that I was going to do it, and except for her. So.
How special was that for you to get to do that in front of the place that you love so much and with the person
incredible.
you love so much?
No, yeah, I guess I kind of just want to be with her right now. I'm not gonna lie, but no, it's awesome. This stadium, this university has given me so much, and it's incredible to be able to do it on it.
Would you like us to get out of here?
You can take as much time as you want.
I feel like after halftime that somebody else could have punted in the second half.
Yeah, no, I could have. Luckily, they told me right after that happened, like, all right, we're shutting down punt. You're good. I kind of just wanted to jump in the stands right there, but I was like, we still had a couple of holds left, and I don't think we kicked in the fourth quarter. So pretty easy day after that. So.
Where'd you keep you have the ring hidden?
I had the ring on my side right here, and then when she lined up, I put it down by my foot so she couldn't see it, and then she tried, and then when she came up, I told her to stop. I mean, you guys saw it.
Have you
pulled
seen
it out.
the video
So
of it yet?
I saw like a GIF of it. I haven't seen it.
So you've seen Blake's reaction, right?
Yes, that's what I saw. I just saw a GIF of that. They were showing it in the locker room. He's quite the character. That was pretty funny. Yeah.
So you had the ring on you. Are you checking the entire game to make sure it's still on you?
No, Coach had it. Okay. Coach Fleming had it. He was nice enough to hold on to it. Yeah, I didn't want to. Have that on me. I think it'd pop out mid punt. That would have been a little awkward.
How many was your whole team in on it? Everybody knows?
Just about every. I tried to keep it as quiet as I could, just because I didn't want her to find out. But specialists aren't the best at keeping secrets, and it spread pretty quickly from that. And but yeah, just about everybody knew when I went out there. Luckily, she didn't, so that was nice.
Drew, obviously this is a place with significance to you, and you were there in your brotherhood.
Yeah.
But your fiance, does this have any significance to her too?
Oh yeah, she came to all the games last season. We grew up together. I mean, we really feel like we know each other so well, and she's experienced a lot with me. So she loves this university, coming to the games, and she'll definitely not forget this game.
What's her name?
Avery Eliason. AVERYELIASON.
Honorary member of the Brotherhood.
SON. What was that?
Honorary member of the Brotherhood.
Yeah, yes. She got to know the guys. The guys got her to know her real well today. So everybody did. Yep.
Congratulations.
That is without question the most you're ever going to hear a punter get in. Although Drew Chrisman, the Michigan State game, remember he took the microphone because he had 6 punts inside the 10-yard line that amounted to it. But congratulations to him and Avery, and even though Woody's probably looking down going, what has happened? A proposal during the spring game. But that was pretty cool and pretty fun.
We've talked about offense and defense, but really one of the things we missed today was really the kicking game. Which one of the things I thought that Jim Tressel did was great, and I took it over to ODU too, was when we'd have the kicking scrimmage.
Special team scrimmage.
Man, I'll tell you what.
You guys would open that up, and that was actually, I thought, what is this when he first brought it? It was actually kind of fun to watch.
It was fun to watch.
Where every play was a punt or some kind of special teams play.
Everything was a special teams play.
Yep.
And, a lot of those guys are the same guys all game long. And then they had to go back-to-back plays for like an hour. Wow.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to Drew Chrisman, the play of the game, coming at halftime when he proposed to his girlfriend Avery, and she said yes. We'll come back as we start to wrap up our best Buckeye coverage spring game, post-game show. Bill Conley and Eric Rieser with me, Matt McCoy, right here on 610 WTVN. Lori Schmidt got that interview. She texted me and said, and this is my bad, operator error. I cut off Drew Chrisman before he said his fiance would have missed the kick because she was setting up for a field goal.
You better watch what he says. Now he can be in hot soup already.
That's the smartest answer.
No.
Right after she just said, yes, I do.
And then he disses her. That's right. Exactly. Matt McCoy, along with Bill Conley and Eric Rieser, were with you for another few minutes here on our best Buckeye coverage spring game, post-game show. Another Now, we didn't see that much of him, although he was out there quite a bit. But in terms of receptions and catching the ball, the guy that's going to probably be the number one receiver this year is KJ Hill. Had a decision whether to leave. He decided to come back. He's got a chance, actually, in terms of receptions, to, if he has a really good year this year, to leave Ohio State as Ohio State's all-time leading receiver in terms of catches. He played a lot, is going to be a leader on this offense this year. Here's KJ Hill after the spring game.
Do you feel this team has the potential to go into the fall and be just as good or better than the teams you've been on here before, or what do you feel?
I feel we can, it's all about, it's really the push that we make in the summer, the spring, but with spring, the coaches around, summer, the coaches not around. I feel like that's when the team really know who you are and find itself, because it's just us. And, when you just get that chemistry through everybody, offense and defense clicking together, I feel like that's when you make the biggest strides on the team.
So it's on you guys now.
Right, it's on them. Coach is going to be on the road recruiting. They got their time off, so it's just going to be us and the strength staff here. So I feel like that's the time where we really gel together.
How important is it going to be for receivers to kind of build sort of a rapport with quarterbacks over the summer?
That's a big thing, Like I said earlier, with the coaches going, it's just going to be us. So we running it, we got a group message, what time we throwing, then, we do what we do. So that's a big part of it.
Sorry if you got to ask this already, but what were your impressions of Justin working with you guys as receivers? Seemed like once he settled in, it was 4 straight touchdowns.
Right. I think he was a little nervous, coming out of the spring game. I asked him, he was like, nah, but I know he was. I feel like he got comfortable after, he made a throw. Actually, after the first series, he got comfortable. He started stepping up in the pocket, going through his reads, looking like through practices that he's been doing.
Comments of KJ Hill there. Very interesting, Bill, though. His overall point in that was that the work for those guys is just starting. The coaches are away now. But how important is that summer, especially with a quarterback, as we were talking about before, like a Justin Fields that hasn't been here that long, the 7-on-7s and practicing on your own with the receivers, getting out there and throwing. How important is this stretch of the next few months before camp?
Very important. Right now the Masters is on.
Yes.
And you talk about the relationship between a golfer and his caddy. Caddy tells him what clubs to use, and they have a great relationship. That's the same with the quarterback and receiver. You have to know your man that's out there. That's why Dwayne Haskins was so good. He had a lot of different receivers, different speed, different talents, broke at different points on certain patterns and things like that. And to be really good, that has to be like a machine. And right now, until August, those guys will spend so much time together in the indoor and the outdoor fields, learning each other's abilities. Very important.
And I thought it was really telling, and KJ Hill alluded to it, was that he got better after that first series. And for me, it showed how quick Justin Fields is able to just pick up on everything, because he was able to establish a rhythm. I know KJ Hill has a drop that he'd probably want back, but that between him and the wide receivers who he's had very limited time with, 3 months, maybe less than that,
right,
that he was able to quickly pick that up, and you hope that can just keep that rhythm going and just quicker and quicker as they install more plays and more styles of offense. It was the seal. I guess the sky's the limit for Justin Fields with this wide receiver core, just because of the talent with the quarterback and the wideouts.
I remember what turned out to be an infamous Big Ten media days last year for other reasons, but Paris Campbell was there, and I had a chance to talk to him. And Bill, he said, because I was asking him about Dwayne and getting ready for the season, and he said we had a text group with the receivers and the quarterbacks, and he said Dwayne was always like texting like, hey, I'm going to throw, who wants to come? And that's kind of what KJ is saying. Those guys, their relationship is very important on and off the field too.
Yeah, and that's the difference the way it used to be. It used to be you went home for 2 months. You saw each other in August.
Yeah.
When you come back to camp right now, nobody goes home, and they work out every day on those things. And so it's such a fine line between an incompletion and completion, and completion and interception, that ball has to be placed at just the right spot and just the right time that it goes into it. It's a precision game anymore, and those guys have to work at it continually.
Final break, and then we are back, and we'll wrap up our best Buckeye coverage spring game show. Matt McCoy, Bill Conley, Eric Rieser with you on News Radio 610 WTVN. Welcome back. Our best Buckeye coverage, spring game, post-game show. Thanks to Bill Conley and Eric Rieser for hanging out with me. We will be wrapping it up. Eric, you were just reading on Twitter that Tate Martell's spring game didn't go well down in Miami?
I guess this is Miami quarterback Tate Martell's being booed for his performance during the spring game.
That's a little extreme,
take it
isn't it?
however you'd like.
Where's that Southern hospitality?
But that's what's so much fun about Twitter.
All 18 Miami fans on hand for the Miami spring game. Yeah. I hope that's not true. I mean, say what you want about Tate. That would be a little harsh to boo a guy for a spring game performance. Although our very first question today was feeling like Justin Fields is wildly inaccurate, and he may be. I don't know, but I don't know that you can judge a lot from today. But bottom line, Bill, Ryan Day wanted to accomplish over 15 days and 15 practices, and what he got out of today. What do you think he probably feels best about at this stage and as he gets ready for the long off season here, and then, of course, getting ready to gather for fall camp?
Well, it sounds like he's very confident in his athletes. He's very, very confident that he has athletes that can play the game. There's talent is here, and that he's got the potential to develop this team into something special, just like all coaches want to feel. And you know what? If you got some new faces on the offensive side, okay, it's better. I'm going to tell you as a coach, it's better to have the majority of best players back on defense because they can keep you in the football game, and that in special teams. And you can take good talent, and if they grow the way you think they can, you're very happy as a coach.
Sam on Twitter, we mentioned this earlier, but very impressed with what I saw from Garrett Wilson, a true freshman that will certainly make an impact. Zach Harrison, I think, will make an impact on defense. Those are two of the younger, early enrollees. What do you think? I mean, I certainly believe that Garrett Wilson for sure is going to be an impact player on offense.
Absolutely. I think under Urban Meyer and now under Ryan Day, they've done a great job of recruiting to their needs. And that's what we're seeing now. Guys that can come in early and play.
Yeah. Zach Harrison, by the way, the black stripe thing, Eric.
Friday.
He got his black stripe taken off on Friday.
It's tough just because of on the defensive side as a lineman, they're not pinning their ears back and they're not going. They're just keep contained, get to your assignments, beat the guy off the ball. But Zach Harrison, just the look of the guy looked like he belonged out there with the big uglies.
Yeah.
And which is important for a guy who's a freshman.
Well, his athleticism, Zach Harrison's, is ridiculous. I mean, this is a guy that ran track and was at, what is he, 6'6" or 6'5"? What?
Massive guy.
He's, just that alone jumps off the page at you when you look at a kid like that. And, is it going to...
before you give him the strength program, before Mickey Marotti gets really, gets his hands on him.
And we should mention that too. I mean, we heard KJ Hill talking about all the extra work that they're going to do on their own, but also Mickey Marotti, summer conditioning, when that comes up, how important are those months that he has with those guys?
Absolutely. I mean, we recruit guys, and I say to moms, I say, now remember, come Christmas, when you buy your son shirts, get 2 neck sizes bigger than you got last year.
Well, I love that they put off on social media a lot of times. They'll put before and after pictures, like when a guy gets there and what they look like. And it's not like, Bill, they come in. I mean, they're highly skilled high school athletes. It's not like they're fat, out of shape kids. They're in shape, but there's just something different about when a strength and conditioning coach like a Mickey Marotti gets hold of it.
Well, that and nutrition. You put those two things together, that's why athletes are so talented today.
All right. That's going to do it for us. Our best Buckeye coverage spring game show. Thank you for coming in, Bill.
All right. Can't wait.
Eric.
Tigers one back off the leader.
That's right. That's right. Go Jackets tomorrow as they try to take a 3-game lead in that series. Obviously, we'll have best Buckeye coverage for you all during the fall, anytime anything happens. Appreciate all the interaction on Twitter with me. That was great. Lori Schmidt, thanks for all your work in the stadium. That'll do it for us. Thanks for joining us today on your home of the best Buckeye coverage, News Radio 610 WTVN.